you ever felt frustrated, overwhelmed, or stuck wasting time in admin instead of growing, leveraging, and scaling your business? Then this podcast is for you. Welcome to Delegate to Elevate, the podcast that's all about handing off what you don't need to do so you can focus on what you do best. So here's your host, Bonnie Schutz.
Hello, everybody. I am Bonnie Schutz, your host of Delegate to Elevate, Get Done. Welcome to another episode. Today, I am fortunate enough to bring you a guest that was introduced to me by a business partner, mentor, client, and all the things, who was a previous guest, by the way. I'd like you to meet Miles Kailburn. Hi, Miles.
Hey, Bonnie. Thank you.
You're welcome. Miles is co-founder and CEO of OTM, which is meetotm.com, by the way, a growth consultancy dedicated to helping founder-led B2B service firms scale effectively. With over 15 years of experience, Miles has guided countless businesses through OTM's proprietary Path to Growth framework, a structured approach that empowers business owners to break free from the day-to-day grind and build a scalable, predictable growth engine. That's perfect. I love it.
That's what we do.
That is what we do too over on this side in a whole different way. We could, work in tandem. I love it. So tell me a little bit more about you and the birth of your business and kind of the type of providers you've served over the last 15 plus years.
Certainly. So my wife and I moved out in 2004 from upstate New York. We moved out here to Colorado. Just wanted a change of scenery and love the weather and a great economy out here. And so we moved out as soon as we could and worked for a few years. And my wife actually started freelancing, and that freelancing business morphed into a kind of full-time job that she created. And I started to moonlight writing some code for her in the first year or so, and that became more and more. And I left my gig in IT consulting and joined her full time, and did that organically for probably about 6 to 8 years. And somewhere in that realm, we kind of sat at the table one day and said, "Shit, I think we actually have a company."
Love it.
I think there's a strong codependency here. I think people actually have mortgages and depend on us, and we depend on them with our clients. And that it was a surreal moment when we started the business with no real vision other than, kind of jokingly, but somewhat seriously say the vision was Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And and then it shifted from there. So started out as a web development shop and morphed into a full service firm.
I love that you did a career pivot. It's a lot of what I did. It was like 30 years in corporate for me when I decided I'm done with that shiz, that political environment. And I just wanted more. And I was at the top of where I could be as an administrative person. And I worked a lot with IT guys. So that's where you struck a memory chord in my head. I can see that. And a lot of them, unfortunately, got laid off, during the tech bust and all that kind of thing. And a lot of them became consultants. And who knew that even me, who actually started my company as a recruiter, who knew that I could grow just being a recruiter into a full-fledged agency company model, just as a secretary, who the heck? And I too took my scepter out and donned it on my husband's shoulders, who has a full-time job. But I said, you are now my CTO and my CFO because I don't like bookkeeping. And Lord knows I don't know as much as you do about tech. So he took that. So it's his side hustle now for many years, which I, intrude.
It's a great way to team up.
Yeah, I intrude upon his free time, or I throw up the day on him when he gets home from work, and we had to agree. He's like, give me an hour to put my feet up before you just. So he's way more invested in this podcast now and that side of the business and what this could grow into. So he's kind of having that epiphany, like you guys did, we can make a company out of this thing. Let's do it. So I love that we have that sort of similar story. Yeah. As like we start out as one thing and here's your career path. You're just going to stick in that. And you're like, as we get older, we're like, we change our minds a little more. And as you and I chatted a little bit earlier, you said it was okay to share that you were diagnosed with adult onset ADHD. And I hear this more and more and more. And in fact, been told by several close friends that, hey, I think you have it. Like, I'm not diagnosed, but obviously I show the same signs, which I'm okay with that. I'm taking it as a superpower is what I've been advised to do. And it helps us as visionaries, right? It makes it a little difficult for us to focus on one thing. I like to call it pinging. I ping a lot. But having been an EA in corporate, I was all about the details and super hyper focused. And I don't know what happened to me, Miles. I don't know. It might have happened to you too when we had that revelation, but I digress. This show is all about delegation and outsourcing or hiring team members. So it started out you and your wife. When you started to get into things and things started making sense and you were building that business, when did you decide that you needed somebody else or either a new hire or an outsourced thing? What was it and when and who?
Well, let's see. We've been in business coming up on 18 years now. So however long ago that was, but we're here in Northern Colorado and we have Colorado State University, so we have a great university system here. So early on, we realized we needed a content hire. Our work in website development started to push out of, just things evolve, and we expanded outside of just the technical side of website development and started to do more content development and started to look around, and we first started with interns, or I shouldn't say interns, college kids looking for part-time gigs. We can maybe label as an intern, but the interesting thing there was we interviewed a couple people, and there was one of maybe the nuances, if you normalize higher education a little too much, is they all exit college with the exact same credentials and they become a little bit of a commodity. And we always look for the ones that break free of that. And so learned early on when we were doing the interviews, we had 3 great candidates. They were all fabulous, but on paper, they're all the same. And I remember my wife, Val, was like, I don't know, which one do we go with? And, we had never hired anyone. And so
put them in a hat.
We thought, do we flip a coin, roll a dice, rock, paper, scissors, we'll figure this out. And any one of those probably would have been more strategic in our approach. But there was one that stood out to me, and it had everything to do with this individual was very into European cars, Audis and things like that, and the little Audi car clubs. And so he actually had built a little like Euro Sport magazine or something. It was doing some content and photography there. Yeah. And it was interesting because to me, it stood out because he could talk about, he never did, but I could connect the passion of what we were doing to what he was doing at home for fun. Nice. And I was like, we're going to go with Mike. And Val's like, my wife was like, why? And I'm like, because he's already doing it. She's like, he's never done it before. I'm like, he's exploring and trying to figure it out himself. That's, I love your
open-mindedness and the way you can kind of connect that. That's a really good takeaway today. Yeah.
And turns out he was our first employee, worked with us for somewhere around 10 years and went off to do global things and lead huge global projects. And
you helped him get his start. That should feel really good.
Yep. He's still a dear friend and still hangs out occasionally in our office when he's looking for somewhere to hang out. So he was our first employee, and we lucked out heavily on that first one.
Oh, I love the luck outs.
It's luck, statistics.
Yeah. Basically, you throw that, you pick the one out of the hat, and even as a recruiter, like when I first started, I'm old school. I'd print out resumes and then I have 30 of them and I throw them on the floor. Oh, which one looks a little different than the other? You know, we all just fake it till we make it in the beginning, especially if we're doing a career pivot like that.
Yep.
That's funny though. I love that you brought up interns because that's not something that I think we've actually talked a whole lot about on the show so far. So that is a great way to dip yourself into delegating or outsourcing, offloading something from your plate to somebody else in your business, just so that you can spend more time doing what you're good at. I imagine. What did you were more the tech guy and your wife was, what did she do?
She leads creative. So her background's in design and creative, and my background's in IT, technical coding.
That's perfect. That's a perfect marriage. Just tell her. You can tell her I said that.
We lucked out. Can I be the benefactor of that?
Yeah, right. Please, exactly. I feel like my husband and I are the same thing, and I'm so fortunate to have a couple coming on soon. I'm really excited to talk about a couple and them working together. I should have known that you and Val worked together. That's very cool. I did not know that because I've had some struggles. I ain't gonna lie. This thing could make or break a marriage when you're working together. But it was the same theory for me. Like I'm the corporate background with the administrative, all the things that go on in the back end of running a business. And my hubby was the tech guy. He was the coder, the fix your monitor guy, whatever. And I was like, that's perfect, but little did I know it was a little stressful. It's been a little stressful, but only because, he has a full-time job.
Oh, yeah.
My plan is to get him out of that, as I elevate my business through all the things I'm delegating, which, has been game changing, but it took me a while because I've said this many times and you people are probably getting sick of hearing me say this, but you know how doctors are the worst patients. Well, an EA from corporate with that 30 years of experience is the worst at, not the worst. I've gotten really good at it, but initially the worst at delegating. I'm like, I can do all this myself. Nobody can do this better than me. I had to grow. And I in fact attended and it was called the Optitude Growth Academy. And I think you're probably familiar with it.
Yes, I am.
You're our mutual acquaintance and former guest on the show. I'll just say it. Brian Curlin. I'm sure he doesn't mind.
Hey, Brian.
I invested in myself, which I'm sure you can relate to too. And it was when my business got to a certain level, investing in myself and sitting in my CEO seat and stop thinking of myself as just a secretary anymore. My life and my business just changed, and that made me better at delegation. And would you say that like when you and your wife really narrowed in on what your role should be and what you should be doing, that delegation and taking things off your plate became easier?
Oh, much. And that was a long journey.
It can be.
10, 12 years ago, I think somewhere in that realm, we read EOS, Traction by Gino Wickman. And I read it first. I'm typically the more curious one. And I remember riding my bike through City Park on the way to the office and listening to it audibly to kind of catch up on some stuff. And somewhere around there, I just stopped and I was like, this is it. Like, you go to, when you start the business, this is a little dating now, but you're like, all right, we got to figure out HR. We got to go to Barnes and Noble and buy a book on HR. All right, now we got to do this on sales. And then you're like,
on my encyclopedia.
Yep. Yeah. After 3 or 4 of these, I mean, AI can do this in a hot minute for us now, but you're like, what the hell do we do on a Tuesday just to keep the company afloat? And so that book was incredibly helpful. And Val read it and was like, yep, we need to adopt this. It just help us get just an operating system, and cadence down. And Mike, our first employee, was still with us, and Carrie, who is now a partner with us, and the two of them read it, and we handed the book out to them on Friday. They're very, high achievers. So on Monday morning, Val and I woke up to 2 separate emails saying the same thing, that Val and I were in the wrong seats. That even though she founded the company, she was the integrator. She can get people aligned. She can get people to move. She can unstick things. And that my technical background really took a backseat to the fact that I have much higher visionary tendencies. And so we were actually sat down by our team, or some of our team, Val, or Carrie and Mike, and told, you need to change. And they both write very compellingly. And we read it and we said, yep.
You're like, damn.
We'll change tomorrow. And so,
talk about what are they like managing up?
yeah. And
cool.
I also just creating the culture. And for that, I think in hindsight, psychological safety or, whatever that they felt to just say, you guys need to change your roles. And
wow,
we both read it and we didn't blink once, and it made sense, and we've ran that way ever since. Yep. Let's try that.
Oh, so, you're the lucky ones. You never know. Yes. And, if you're listening, you just never know when, sometimes it just lands and you find the right people. Sometimes it doesn't land and you don't find the right people. Do you have any like delegation or, horror stories to add on? Or
yes, I mean all of them. That's how we learn, right?
Exactly.
I think the interesting thing on our company is none of us came from corporate. I came from a school district environment, and then went into consulting, but not true like large management consulting, more kind of very niche IT, healthcare type IT work.
Oh, right.
So none of us benefited from seeing how it works upstream in large organizations, then coming down and doing it. We kind of had to go the other way and say, I don't know how to do it. So how would we do it if we did it? And let's try that. So, some of our early team members, you get kind of blinded by the convenience and ease when it goes right. Mike, Carrie, lots of our team fall into that example. And you're like, oh yeah, you just bring them on and they bolt right in, and it's easy, it's fun, it's exciting.
Plug and play.
And they love it as much as you do. And they're curious and, goal focused with the clients and all that. And then sometimes you find that, either it's a personality mismatch in that role, you find out the skill set, just isn't there. And so the delegation, or, for us, it's more kind of creation of new roles and expansion. Yeah. It's always something we're working on. And I think now more than ever, it's getting much, I don't want to say harder, but, work in marketing is getting much more complex, and it should. That's what we do. But really, that kind of superficial outside look at, it's a fun, exciting thing. They drink beer and play ping pong and
pool table in there.
And sit together on a whiteboard and just doodle for hours. The reality is actually it's all data driven, and creative is simply an input to change the data. And so it's gotten, again, I'll say that technically, we have tons of creative people on our team, but they also know, the world will tell you if the creative works. The click-through rates, the conversion rates, all of that will tell you. So I would say certainly the last couple of years, it has gone, I would say, almost purely data-driven as an industry. And that shifts significantly the type of people that we're hiring, the skills that we're prioritizing. So, that type of change coming from the software development side, I'm very comfortable with, but we've had to make that open, transparent planning conversation, with the team, and make sure that they're enlisted, they're comfortable, they've got the resources, the training. So that's it on the team side.
I love that.
We can talk about my attempt to use a VA.
Oh, sure. I just wanted to say that, I talk a lot about real quick. I do want to hear about that. Real quick. I talk a lot about growing your delegation muscles, and it's like being on the like an autism spectrum, and there's nothing bad about it. It's you're at a different place. And I shifted my agency model into being able to support people at different stages of their growth, like from the 10-pound hand weight to the big time bodybuilder. And so that it could be a life cycle. You may want to grow it, you may not. So it sounds like you definitely took it from the 10-pound weight to at least a few 100-pound weights, and congrats on that. So, and yes, let's hear about your attempt to work with the VA. No names, no country specifics. Nope. I would just love to hear your experience with that, since that's right up my alley.
Yeah. No, and failure was on my part. Still great friends with the individual. So as we got to a certain size and things started to get busy, and you start to hear the consistent chatter of the need of a VA. And I say that in the best way possible. I don't know a better way to phrase it, but you just get to a level and like, everyone's like, you need a VA, you got to dump that stuff off. You got to prioritize on your $1,000 efforts and all that. And so that all starts to happen at a certain point. And, I was like, yep, makes sense. Let's start that path. Reached out to a VA group, did the intake, and got paired up with a great individual. And turns out I don't have that muscle developed yet, to your point. Because I think what we tried to do was, I'll hire someone to help me help myself so they can help me, or some really weird way of approaching that. I was intentionally, don't try and sort that out. I was intentionally trying to confuse it, because I'm like,
there's my ADHD. What? I couldn't make sense of that, but that's okay.
Yep. And so, we spent probably close to 6 months trying to help me get through that. And what we found was a couple of things. One was, our work wasn't anywhere consistent or reproducible. My schedule wasn't anywhere like that. And so it became really hard to delegate a lot of this, where everything was a one-off with a lot of context. Our sales process was I don't want to say all over the place. It was consistent, but what we were selling to different segments varied wildly. Right. So even just trying to bring her into that process was a struggle. And I think, trust and alignment come up, but I don't mean, I had trust in her, unequivocally, but I didn't have trust in her skill and alignment, not skill. Alignment to what we were doing, because
specifics are kind of like a knowledge of what you do. Yeah.
Yes.
Beforehand.
And so she helped me with a lot of kind of executive function work, helping me put in systems and tools to help, because she was trying to do that so that she could help me. I still use a lot of that today, like the stack method for inbox management. It's still
I love it.
Fabulous. So, I think it's stackmethod.com. It's just kind of a little white paper on
Thanks for
an
the
approach.
Share. Yep. I like it.
But, we parted ways and still great friends. And it kind of took a different approach. And so we started to kind of shift away towards how do I start to push more of this? If I can't push it off individually, how can I push just the thing off? Like, instead of some financial, help me review this financial report.
Right.
Then I have to give the context. What am I looking for? What am I worried for? What stand out to me?
What's going on today at home?
And then you're like, I should have just done this myself.
Yeah.
And so we shifted that and kind of took an approach where it was support. We have a fabulous individual on our team who leads a lot of our back office work. And I was like, hey, just help support me in this. And I kind of brought her in, and I kind of let her shadow me. And then she would find her own takeaways, and she'd, help out in that way. But she had other responsibilities and other autonomous work that she did in the company. And then that kind of shifted to kind of a co-create model where, she had the competence and the understanding, the competence and the skill, but the understanding of the context of our business. Yeah. And so we could start to co-create a lot of this financial work or things like that. Mm-hmm. And I think only at that point, then I could delegate, but the only way I was able to delegate was the whole thing. I still cannot, I personally struggle on like the ad hoc miscellaneous stuff.
Piecemeal. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really hard for me to do. Although I will say that, I have this relationship with quite a few people on our team.
Sure.
Because that's, once it gets to a capacity for me, then I'm like, we need to hire this. And we kind of use that same model, and it's worked really well. I mean, the person, it's Nicole, our office manager, and the person who she knows more about our company than I do. She knows every
gonna go.
She is she is unbelievably exceptional. And now to this point, I'm like, Nicole knows all this stuff better than Nicole knows everything better than I do, even to a point where she can take care of everything else. And now I can truly just be like, hey, here's this random thing. Can you help me? And she knows everything there is to know about our company. And she can take care of it.
Your delegation muscle through that. I like that.
Yes. I think we had to get there a different way, but kind of tying back to the comment on ADHD, I think that's been, something that early on I was so curious, so scattered, so, flying by the seat of my pants that the delegation was hard. And as I started to realize more around having ADHD as an adult and recognizing the coping mechanisms I've created, and also trying to just ask, what are the ones that I don't know? And can someone just give me the shortcut for the next 10 years? One of the things I had found and read was, and I had noted it for our talk here.
Please. Thank you.
And it's a quote on it. It was, people with ADHD may struggle to delegate small tasks due to executive function challenges, such as planning, task management, and perfectionist thinking, while finding it easier to delegate whole tasks because they can see the bigger picture and trust others to complete the goal. And I read that and I was like,
no, you're like,
oh, that's what I did it like 1.5 times without knowing it. Turns out that's actually why it worked for me.
Wow,
and
cool.
Now our team knows that's the model.
Yeah.
And they've actually, I don't even know if they've ever come across that comment. That was just something I'd read
unconsciously
in one of the books. But they found it out themselves that I'm terrible in the middle, just delegate the whole thing, give them the autonomy to do it. And
I always use the trust but verify is a really good model too. Like you said, give them the whole thing, trust they can do it because you've communicated it and had a lot of clarity with what they need to get done. Dip in a little bit, just make sure everything seems good, communicate.
Some checkpoints.
Checkpoints. Perfect. I love that. I have an episode called the 7 C's and I could make it 8 C's with checkpoints. I like that word too. 8 C's. It just doesn't sound as good as 7 C's. Yeah. Isn't that a salad dressing or something like that? I don't know. I'm showing my something. Age.
Also,
that's awesome. Oh, I love that you shared that with me. I can't tell you how valuable that is to know, for one thing, if I indeed have ADHD myself, and then how many of us are out there. And that's a real good way to help any professional service provider that may or may not be diagnosed with ADHD to kind of compartmentalize that. Maybe it didn't work this first way you tried it, but maybe try this. Whether you have that or not, this may work for you as a person. And I like that little bit of a pivot there into a different direction of making delegation work or in deciding to hire a new team player. I think the way that Nicole has evolved with your company sounds great. I'm just a little biased having come from sort of that background. Tell her happy Administrative Professionals Month for me if this happens to air afterwards. I'm saying it now in April.
We take care of her every day. She is a critical part of the company.
Oh, she's a sparkly part of the company. I love that. I love that a lot. So there's lots of takeaways that we could pull from this, and that's kind of what I like to do with every episode. If there's something that we haven't thought of that you have right off the top of your head that people could take away when they're considering this, when they're growing their that muscle, and they're maybe a little bit newer of a company than you, and they're just like a part of them is hearing people, you need a VA, you need a VA. Like what might they think of before taking that leap? Maybe is a way to ask it.
It kind of goes back to me in hindsight of hiring. The worst thing you can do is hire, because we've tried to do this in the past, hire someone to just come in and just help me with this. Right. We need to expand into email marketing. So just come help me with email marketing, right? It's kind of this superficial assistant, just help assist me with this. And it never works with, full brought in team members, with special, there's no clarity. There's no expectations. There's no alignment. And I think that was the same thing that we went through it. So the hard thing is, the lesson for me was I tried to, effectively outsource the learning and the muscle memory of it before I had an understanding of it. And if I could do it again, I'd have a much better understanding and probably have run in my own vacuum of thought here, over maybe a month or 2 months, like what would I be delegating and what is the consistencies? could I even explain what this is? And at some point you have to get there. But I think I would have found that I had, 37 things to delegate, and 36 of them were different. And 17 of them, I didn't know even what I wanted to do with it. And so it's like, okay, maybe I need to, and we ultimately started to consistent, productize services, bring consistency, force more standardization so that I could run things through channels. And now I would say it is way more predictable, way more consistent.
That ownership of the channel. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Come in and run this channel. Oh, I love that. That's perfect because I've had lots of lessons learned when I've tried to create little roles and take a broad scope and make it a little smaller, thinking that they would do better in that role. And I learned that lesson fast that, if that's not what I initially brought them in to do, they still have their old mentality and it just didn't work. And I've had to learn those lessons hard. Not fun. Oh my gosh. Well, I think you've just been great. Thank you for your vulnerability and your willingness to share a lot of your growth experience by delegation. You've definitely leveled up and it's been great to watch over the last few years that I've known you. And I hope that we can stay in touch. And I encourage everybody listening today, tomorrow, tonight, whatever it is, that, I'm going to put Miles's information down below for everybody. Reach out if you need any of those services, or even if you heard something today that really hit a chord and you want me to have Miles back to dig a little deeper into that, put that down in the comments below and we will definitely have him back if he's willing. So
and reach out anytime on anything. Always happy to chat.
Thanks again for coming today, Miles. I appreciate you more than you know, and keep delegating to elevate that business. Have a great one. Talk to you again.
Thank you for
Thanks,
having
everybody.
me.
Bye-bye.
So that's it for today's episode of Delegate to Elevate. Head on over to Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen and subscribe to the show. One lucky listener every single week that posts a review on Apple Podcasts or iTunes will win a chance in the grand prize drawing to win a $15,000 private VIP day with Bonnie herself. Be sure to head on over to delegatetoelevatepodcast.com. That's with the number 2. And pick up a free copy of Bonnie's gift and join us on the next episode.